Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Biggerplate.com. Delighted to welcome two speakers to the channel today to just talk a little bit about their work. I'm delighted to have Juliette Breurec. Did I get that vaguely right?
Yes.
Pretty close, yeah. And Virgile Garnier. These are the two founders of doUmind, a really interesting new app that's been released into the wild that enables you to take pictures of hand-drawn mind maps and have them convert into digital versions. I'll leave Juliette and Virgile to explain a little bit more. We'll try and put some screenshots and videos over this so you can see how it works. But I'm just really delighted to have Juliette and Virgile with me today to just learn a little bit about how they got started and where they're up to today with doUmind. And where they maybe see that going in the future. So first of all, Juliette and Virgile, thank you very much for joining me. I'm sorry we can't do this interview in French. My French is very poor, so it's probably best that way. But welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having us. We're delighted to get this interview, obviously. We may make some mistakes in English because we're French.
Hopefully not.
We'll try not to.
Obviously, I'll help with your mistakes with my excellent French as we go. So whereabouts are you guys in France right now? I'm here in the UK and it's miserable and grey and wet outside, as you would expect. Where are you in France today?
In the south of Paris, and it's rainy too.
Okay. So you got some British weather with you as well.
Yes.
So that's perfect. Great. So guys, I'm just going to dive straight in because I think what you've created is really interesting. You've gotten a lot of attention from some of the sort of the mind mapping experts out there. So I'm really interested to hear all about it. But if you could maybe just give us a little bit of a summary of where did this idea come from that I can scribble a mind map on my notepad, get my phone out, take a picture, and you're going to convert it into something digital? What's the sort of the background of that? How did you guys come to become a team working on this as an idea?
Well, we were in a course at our engineer school, and the teacher told us we had to work as in a group and put out some ideas, and he wanted us to give the result of our thinking to him in the form of a mind map. So that's what we did, obviously, and we were like 8 people working on one mind map, so it was really messy. The result was really messy because everyone just put one idea somewhere and made a link, and yeah, it wasn't beautiful. So obviously we had to make it in a beautiful design version to give it back to the teacher as he asked us. And well, the interesting part of our work was done in like 45 minutes. And then to make it in a beautiful version, someone had to spend an hour and a half making it beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was frustrated because I checked on the App Store or the Play Store if there was any app maybe doing exactly that scanning thing that would be useful, and there wasn't any. So I just grabbed a piece of paper, I wrote down that idea, and it just sat there for a moment until we had the opportunity to follow a course on artificial intelligence, which was very interesting, but I thought something else would be more interesting. But Juliette convinced me to take that course with the good argument that it would be the first step to this project.
Right.
So agreed, we did that both together, and we made our artificial intelligence in Java. We coded it ourselves, and yeah, that was the first step. And so we adapted this course to our project, to doUmind. Well, it wasn't called that yet, but that's the point. Yeah, we worked on this project from that first step, and well, it took form from there. So yeah.
And how long ago was that? Was Juliette pushing you into that class with her to say, we need to learn this? This is going to be interesting and useful. How long ago is that you were working in those classes?
It was 3 years ago.
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
Right. So you've been on a 2.5, 3 year journey so far from that class, and so at what point did you get to actually having a really clear idea of we want mind maps into digital form?
Well, at first, like I said, it was just an idea, and the course we had on artificial intelligence was just
to recognize shapes.
a pretext.
What do you mean?
Pretext. Well, we just wanted to try to see if it worked.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't manage to make a good enough recognition, well, it wasn't useful to try, because that was the hard part. And since we kind of managed to make it great, the shapes recognition was good. We thought, yeah, it might be possible to just try it. But we had courses. Well, we had other courses, so we had to work for a school. So we didn't have too much time to work on that project. So I worked sometimes, some nights, and well, it just sat there for a moment, and until we decided to go on a
gap year.
Gap year, yeah.
That's very British.
To make it, because we were confident at that moment that if we had successfully developed artificial intelligence to recognize those shapes, we would be able to make it in our app. So that's when the project really started.
And is the fundamental? I think it's really interesting. You said when you both went looking to see are there any existing apps, you didn't find anything, and I was quite interested when you told me that previously, because it seems like handwriting recognition has really improved a lot in apps and things over the last few years. But is the key to your challenge technically that it's got to recognize shapes and writing, or is it one more important than the other? Is that kind of two components that you have to be able to do in technical terms?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, initially I thought that handwriting text was impossible to translate, to recognize.
That it didn't exist.
Yeah, because everywhere in the market, all the apps that are trying to sell handwriting recognition is kind of lame. It's not great.
Right.
So I thought that was not an option. We wouldn't be able to do that. So what I did instead was try to recognize the bubbles, the
shapes.
Yeah, the round shapes, and instead of links. Trying to. Yeah, the links are. We don't recognize the links. We just know where the shapes are and how the links are connected to those. But that's not artificial intelligence.
Yes, but that's important.
Yeah. But yeah, the point was to recognize the shapes, because I thought we wouldn't be able to recognize the text.
Or it would be available, but in the future.
Yeah. So that's the starting point of it. But once we launched the app for the first time, the first big complaint we got was that it didn't recognize text. Right. So I went in looking for something more, if something finally existed. I wasn't aware of. And well, I tried different apps, different technologies, and it didn't work as expected, except for one thing, which was Google.
Yes. And
that's not as much as a surprise as I thought, because when you type in catch pass, the anti-robot things on the internet, that's Google, and Google used everyone on this planet to type in text, handwritten text or dirty text, to know what really was in that handwritten text. So actually, when you did that, you helped them to create their database to teach their artificial intelligence to recognize handwritten text. So that's why Google is the only one
doing it.
partially capable of recognizing it.
It amazed me years ago when I learned that the capture codes had been fueling this handwriting recognition database behind the scenes. I thought it was extraordinary, and I think it's a great outcome. I'm sure lots of people might find that strange or scary. I'm not sure, but I think it's a great outcome because it's also helping them to decode old writing and old things. It's serving lots of purposes. Very interesting. So that's the technology that you've been able to leverage or build upon to make doUmind recognize text.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
And just an interesting fact is that now you don't need most of the catch paths are not text anymore. Now they're asking you to see in which pictures you see a car
or a truck, and it's the same principle
for the the smart cars.
So they're sourcing all of these capture codes with images now, so that autonomous vehicles will be better able to recognize those are traffic lights, those are crosswalks. Yeah, it's
exactly.
pretty. I think it's pretty amazing. But
yeah, it's great.
But yeah, I regularly get locked out of our own website by those capture codes. Actually, I'm not very good at them actually. So that's really good. So just when was the first version of the app launched? Then you said you launched the first version. It didn't have handwriting recognition, and you started to get that feedback. So how long ago was that? When did the first version?
This year.
June 2nd this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we are really current with we're getting you guys on video in the really early days of doUmind, which is very exciting. So you get your first version of the app out into it's just on the Google Play Store, wasn't it?
Yes.
And so what was that early reaction? You said you got feedback that people wanted handwriting. So that's on the to-do list. But what was the other kind of, what kind of engagement or feedback did you get? And what did that sort of tell you needed to do?
Well, the formats, we only had available images formats and PowerPoint.
Right.
And people who love to use mind maps, use other tools, editing tools, and they said that it would be really useful to transcript in, for instance, Xmind, Mind Manager, and so on. So
including you. You told us that too.
I try to be somewhat helpful.
And so that was the biggest, comments and feedback that influenced us and our final product for now.
Yeah.
I think
because initially we wanted just to do it in PowerPoint because that's what we would have used at that time when our teacher asked us to make a mind map. So that was the starting point, and we didn't know people were so much using these other tools.
Yeah, it's brilliant because I often see people trying to create mind maps using Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, using the diagram features, and I say, look, try these tools. And people are like, oh, it's so exciting. But, so I think for you guys to have very quickly got that feedback, and not just from me, I should say, but from others, and sort of been able to build that in. So I now can take a photo or a scan rather, the mind map using your app, and then convert it into an Xmind file, save that to my computer, and I've got a working Xmind file, even if it started life as a scribble of notes. I think I certainly imagine that was something that captured a lot of attention amongst the mind mapping software users. I know many of them have tried the app, and you've got some great testimonials on your website from some of the sort of mind mapping experts out there. So you didn't have much familiarity with the world of mind mapping software tools and things before this.
Yeah, we didn't.
So how has your baptism into into the world of mind mapping been? How have you found that as a community to engage with?
Well, we thought, how do I say it? We thought our market would mostly be people trying to do it on PowerPoint. Because, well, that was, you see, everything Juliette did, well, not everything, obviously, but a large portion of what she did was making a mind map, mind map into a design version of it.
Yeah, on PowerPoint.
And given that, well, PowerPoint isn't what people use most in our current clientele. well, all that part isn't as used as we thought it would be. So our initial idea evolved slightly because we changed from one. Well, most people don't use the part we intended them to use.
That's one of the things you learn very quickly, isn't it? When you put something out there, people use it in a totally different way than you expected. And I was always quite surprised when I would see people doing things and adding things on Biggerplate that I had never even imagined they would use mind maps for. And it sometimes opens up your mind to a lot more possibilities and opportunities, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the current where you've kind of got to today, then if we bring ourselves up to the present day, how is it all going, and kind of what's the current feeling in the team about sort of the progress and the journey so far?
You want to try?
Well, I guess an important question: are you still friends?
Yes.
Good. Well, that's something.
But we have a few disagreements on which step to take at the moment, but it's normal because we have a lot of feedback and possibilities opening to us, and we don't know. We have to evaluate more data to evaluate what are the next steps to take.
Because we thought of our app on Android to be a test, not a test app, but since we have this app out, we can use the data from this app to know what our clients want and what's their response to our app. So we currently have this information that a lot of people download our app, and a portion of it uninstalls it, and we don't have enough feedback to know the reason for this. So maybe it's just a normal thing. Maybe it's just they use it one time and then their use of mind maps is over, and so they install it. So maybe that,
then
that's
something. Then they reinstall it. Or something.
Yeah, possibly. But we lack some feedback on what people may want more or what people dislike about this app. So we have a few theories.
So what you need is you need much more kind of concrete feedback, and rather than just.
And we don't know how to get it.
Right.
So.
Because people uninstalling the app, we cannot reach people uninstalling the app to know why they did it. So
you've got to try and get those users to engage with you as a company and as a team, so they can help you and give that feedback. So hopefully anybody watching today, if you do decide to uninstall the app, you can also give Virgile and Juliette some help and say why. But I think there's an interesting part of that, though, which I think might be of comfort to you, in that I know over the many years we've been running Biggerplate, what I encounter a lot is people of all ages in all sorts of professions who say things like, I used to use mind mapping. And it's this strange thing where people have picked up mind mapping to help them solve a problem or figure out a project or whatever it is, or study for school or university. And they finish that process and then they stop mind mapping. And they don't think to carry it forward into other areas. So I have encountered lots of people who have essentially uninstalled mind mapping as a whole. They just stopped doing it. So there may even be something similar happening for you. Perhaps your app helps them solve the problem in the moment. They convert to mind map, they do their mind mapping, and then they go, right, I'm finished with mind mapping, therefore I move on. But really interesting challenge for you, because once they've uninstalled, you can't get much feedback from them, I guess.
Yeah.
So we'll have to try and energize a feedback community to give you some feedback, I guess.
But it's still artificial intelligence, so it's our own. So it has certain limits to it. For example, it needs to be a nice, a beautiful picture, well lit, of white sheets on which you draw with a dark pen. And so, yeah, it has some limits. You can't do everything. You can't scan everything. So that might be a limit. And one theory we could exploit to improve this is actually to change the whole architecture of our program, our software, is to use Google artificial intelligence to recognize text, and from those texts extrapolate where the shapes are, instead of trying to figure out where the shapes are and then look for the text inside those shapes, which changes everything, which would make it probably more
tolerant.
Can you say tolerant?
You can. I then more tolerant, more. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah, it's gonna be able to sort of accommodate the information better. Yeah,
from a more diverse perspective, from the image point of view.
Interesting. So that's going to be maybe doUmind version 2, or maybe you're on version 8 by now. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
Yeah. So there's one sort of avenue of possibility or challenge for you as a team to try and explore as you kind of look ahead. What other kind of ideas have you kind of working on for the future without giving anything too secret away? I think you've got now a paid plan and a free plan, so you've kind of got a commercial model in place already. Is that right?
It is.
And the paid plan is going to give you the ability to export into those mind mapping software formats, Xmind, Mind Manager, FreeMind, I think you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
And some other functionality in paid. And then I think at the moment you're still just Android based. Is that right? Is there any thoughts or ideas around iOS or things like that?
Well, we would want to develop it in iOS as well, but it would take some time and some funds. And we are building currently a crowdfunding campaign that will be available in the few weeks to come. On the, I don't know if you know that website. I think it's a bit French. It's called Ulule. Ulule. We say Ulule here, but
that sounds quite French.
Yes. And so it's a crowdfunding campaign. And we don't know yet exactly the financial details of that, because we don't know whether we're going to develop it or we will ask somebody else to develop it for us. And it's not the same price, the same amount of time dedicated to it. So it's kind of tricky.
So maybe that's some information that we didn't share right now on this interview, but we actually didn't have any, well, not any, but we are not developers.
No.
Right. So you've been figuring it out as you go.
Yes, yes. We learned, well, we studied it for a month or two in our school, but it was almost an introduction to it.
Right.
And so we figured everything out as we went, which probably took us a lot more time than it would for a professional to do it.
Yes.
But we're still students, which means we are currently both in internships.
Right.
Yeah.
As engineers, as mechanical engineers, basically. So
nothing to do with coding.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to sort of finish your engineering day and then put onto your coding hat for the evening to do your doUmind work.
That's our life currently.
Right.
Yes.
And so yeah, we took that gap year, so we had some time to make our Android app in the language that we learned to know, which was Java. And the iOS app is, well, iOS is in another language, which is Swift. So we would need to learn that one too, if we wanted to develop it in iOS.
Plus, we don't have any Mac devices, and we need a Mac devices to code.
I've
heard that might be helpful. Yeah. Yeah. You might need a Mac. Yeah.
So that's why we're going to do it ourselves or pay someone else to do it for us.
Right. So that's, I guess, where you really then start with your crowdfunding to start think probably a little bit more like a company who's going to hire in the resources you need to sort of achieve the objectives. I guess you've got a nice blueprint, you know, an idea of what you're actually building this time. So you can give someone a kind of clearer brief. So the crowdfunding campaign is really going to be trying to sort of fund as an app, as a product. And that's going to be, you said, Juliette, you're going to have that sort of live and open in a couple of weeks, did you say?
In a couple of weeks, yes.
Perfect. So we'll make sure we add the website link that I can't pronounce onto the video, so people can go and have a look at the campaign as well if they want to. That sounds really interesting. So you've got crowdfunding and iOS are potentially quite linked together. And then what about sort of other? How is your sort of interaction with the mind mapping experts been? Have you managed to pick their brains and help use their knowledge to help you sort of with your planning for the future as well?
Well, they helped us greatly, especially Franck Maintenet and Philippe Bukowska,
right?
Which gave us a really important push to on Twitter mainly to
the mind mapping community.
Yeah, to touch the mind mapping community. And there is something really interesting is that when I spoke to Philippe, he wrote an article about us, which was great. And a few weeks later, another person, which is in the school system, saw that article, saw that tweet about it, and tweeted herself, which made the snowball effects. And yeah, that generated the where we are right now.
Some good early momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that helped us greatly.
Yeah, and you've got in the mind mapping community, you have got a very they're quite easily excited. We are quite easily excited mind mapping people. So when we see, your product is genuinely something new, actually, and in some ways it's strange that it hasn't existed before, because I've been asked in the past, can I do this? Can I do that? And we had actually in our annual survey that we used to do annually, but I think it was 2016 even, the report that we created from that, we asked our participants, and I think it was about 900 participants, we said, what technological advances do you think are going to be most relevant for mind mapping in the near future? And some of them said voice recognition. That was one of the big ones that came up. Artificial intelligence came up, although people didn't really know what they meant by that. But one of the ones that did come up was handwriting recognition, and people could see, and I remember reading the comments that people left in that survey where they said, it just seems logical that eventually I'll be able to take a photo of my phone and turn that into a digital mind map. So, and I think it was 2016. So going back some way. So I think it's probably why when people saw what you've created, and certainly when I saw it, I thought this is very interesting. This is quite an exciting development that nobody else has done. So congratulations for particularly since you say you didn't know how to code. I think that's very impressive. So that's really exciting. So you touched, I won't keep you too much longer, but you touched on something there, Virgile, when you said about someone in education read the article and shared it. That kind of just brings me actually to something else I wanted to ask you both about, which is, do you have any sense of the use cases? Where do you see your app kind of being most useful to people? What kind of situations? Because you saying about education made me think of teachers and kids who may be scribbling on whiteboards, and the ability to convert that quite quickly into a digital map that can kind of then live longer and develop. I hadn't actually thought about as a classroom tool. This could be really handy for teachers to kind of digitize students' work and not have it just kind of be stuck on paper, I guess. But do you have any sense of kind of where do you see this being used most, or do you still not quite know yet?
Well, we knew that our main targets initially were around the teaching world and the coaches.
The brainstormings.
Yeah.
And was about that.
But we didn't really know which one of those two types
would be our first clients.
Yes, and obviously
we still don't know.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. I've been doing this for 12 years and I still don't know who the Biggerplate members are really.
Yeah, that was the difficult part in our communication, in our advertisement for our app, because we didn't know how to target people, because we didn't really know who
was most interested
in this. So we thought that mind mappers, or at least people interested in mind maps, were scattered a little bit everywhere. So it's really hard to target the right person.
Yes, it's like asking who is using Post-its. Everyone, but not everyone, and we can't divide them. So
it's a difficult thing to try and one of the challenges we've had for many years is, we've tried very hard to pull lots of, or attract, I guess, the mind mapping community to Biggerplate, but that's been a very challenging process because, lots of them use one tool and not another, and some of the vendors have very active communities and some of them have largely invisible communities. So I can very much relate to your challenge of trying to figure out who, before you even know what our message is, to try and understand who is the message for is really challenging. And I guess comes back around to that issue you were talking earlier about, that sort of feedback loop. When you're in the world of apps, it kind of gets broken quite quickly if there's an uninstall, or if they choose not to write reviews or these sort of things. Your ability to capture that feedback and perspectives and learn about your users is probably quite limited at the moment. Yeah. So certainly something for us to try and to help with. Maybe we can push more people to give you more feedback. You'll be sorry you ever said it. You'll be getting so much feedback, you won't know what to do with it. But
I mean, both positive and negative, because we really need it.
And I think in terms of the Biggerplate, or if I zoom out a little bit, the wider community of mind mapping software users, you have got a really diverse range of use cases there as well. And some of the very established mind mapping software companies, they have a similar challenge in terms of trying to create messaging that fits with a particular audience and knowing who those audience are. So it's a universal challenge, I think. So you're not alone in that one. But yeah, I think the feedback you can get from, I would suggest certainly a lot of the Biggerplate members, they are very engaged, very happy to try things out and to give feedback. So certainly I'll be encouraging as much as possible through this video and maybe other things for them to give it a download, give it a try, and ideally give you some feedback as they're using it instead of waiting until they finished using it.
Yeah, that would be great. And one other important thing is that if we start developing iOS version, and the really the people, how do I say it? We don't really know if it's more useful to improve the existing technology or to develop the iOS version, because if people don't really like the actual version,
it's no use to develop it in
putting
iOS.
Putting it in iOS won't make a big difference because the flaws will still be there. So the feedback is
really important.
It's important to help us know if we are better off improving what exists and afterwards putting it into iOS, or the other way around.
Yeah, that's a big set of questions. That's really a very interesting stage you're at in that journey now in terms of choosing your technology and your platforms. And I suppose having launched in, I think you said June this year, you've had only 3 or 4 months of real world kind of users and feedback. So it's still very early stages to be sort of trying to figure out. So I certainly also really appreciate your openness and your honesty in sharing, because I think it's a really fascinating story. It's a great idea for a product, and I'm excited to see what you decide to do. But I've said very often that I would like people to see the developers who are behind these tools. They're not big companies throwing millions of pounds or euros.
That's for sure.
They're sort of small companies like ours trying to kind of figure things out and talk to their users. So I'm hoping even just sharing your current challenges and your sort of future plans will encourage people to kind of engage with you both as a company as well as just download the product and see what it does. So it's really, really interesting to see. So is there anything else you think? I increasingly think of doUmind as this potential sort of bridge between my notes in a mind map, if I did that, and my software for mind mapping, which helps me really do more complex things. And doUmind, I think, has this really exciting possibility of being the bridge between the written and the digital. So that's kind of my interpretation of what you're trying to do. But is there anything else you think we should know, or that we should be thinking about, or trying to help you with at this stage in the journey?
I don't know. I thought of that bridge too, and nothing really much more. I just wanted to make something, like a scanner. But I don't see. Maybe I didn't understand fully what you meant.
No, it's absolutely just. I'm just interested. I think your mind map scanner, a scanner specific to mind mapping, I think it's a very unique proposition. So I certainly I'm excited to see what you do with it next.
Cool.
So I think, Juliette Virgile, I'll wrap us up here and just say well done on everything you've done so far. I think it's really impressive. You've been doing this on the side of your university studying, which I hope is still going okay. You haven't forgotten to do your studying, which is what happened to me. I wish you all the best for the next phase and those big decisions. And as I said before, I'll certainly be encouraging all of our members to go and explore the app, try it out, and ideally get really involved with giving you both feedback, positive and negative, to try and help shape whatever it needs to be.
It would really be helpful.
Thank you very much.
So that's all from me and from Virgile and from Juliette. You can learn more about doUmind by going to doumind-app.com. I'll put the address here on the screen so it's really nice and obvious. Currently available on for Android, but as you've seen in this video, there are big plans for iOS, possibly, if the users and the feedback suggests that's worthwhile. So thank you very much, Juliette and Virgile, for coming on and for speaking English. I always appreciate when people do that. It's terrible that we can't speak in your native languages, but hopefully the benefit is we can reach maybe a nice wide audience and share your story. So thank you both very, very much for your time today, and best of luck with the next phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.